It had been quite a while since I saw a professional sporting event, so when my friend called to ask me to go see the Sixers take on the Chicago Bulls, I was excited and I said yes. I'll tell you all about it in this episode of the I Can't See You podcast.
From Studio C, welcome to the I Can't See You podcast with David. He can't see, but he's got a lot to say and a face for radio.
Hello there, and welcome to episode 58 of the I Can't See You podcast. My name is David, at David Benge on all the socials. And remember, the podcast is now available on YouTube, so youtube.com/David Benge. I appreciate you checking out this week's episode. And as I mentioned in the intro, it's been a while since I had been down to any kind of professional sporting event. Now, of course, over the last few years, I've gone to some friends' kids' softball games and baseball games, and going back a little bit further, went to a lot of Jane's games when she played softball in high school. And I got to be honest, I really miss going to the games and watching her play, and I wish she could have played when she was in college. But I went down to the Sixers game the other night with my friend Chris Doherty from Doherty and Company Insurance, and he invited me down, and I hadn't been down, like I said, in quite a while. And it's been even longer since I had gone down with anyone, or I should say without Liz. I had been with some other friends, but Liz was always with me. It might have been, 2008, 2009, something like that I had gone down to see the Phillies play. I think it was the Colorado Rockies in a playoff game with my friend Alex. But it had been, again, a long time since I'd gone down to any kind of sporting event, even a few years for going to a Phillies game. And that's typically, if Liz and I end up going to a game, we would go to a Phillies game. Tickets are a little easier to get. We have a few friends that have season seats. So sometimes we would buy a game from them or get tickets from someone. But we would go down. And again, like I've mentioned before, when I go someplace with Liz, it's so much different than when I go on my own. I can pay more attention to other things when I'm with Liz because Liz and I are holding hands, or she's holding my arm, or I'm holding her arm. And she kind of, with little hand gestures will guide me through a crowd. And we really do. And we walk together. We walk very quickly. And we kind of weave through traffic. We're those types of people. We don't walk slow. And now, when I'm on my own, obviously, I don't do as much weaving because I'm not sure what's coming up. I'm not sure. I'm just as worried about running into someone and hurting them as I am about running into something and hurting myself. So I don't want to do that. And I guess you could say I'm a little more responsible when I'm on my own. Not that, we're reckless when we, weave through mall traffic and, going through the mall or, walking on the streets either in Philadelphia or New York. It's just different. So going down without Liz, and I was excited to go down because I hadn't been to a game. Actually, I'd never been to a sporting event using my white cane with anybody but Liz. Maybe Jane was with us and going to some Phillies games and things like that. But with the white cane, I had not been down with anyone but Liz or Jane. So it's different. Again, being with a family member who knows, to talk about different things. And it's kind of funny because as we were walking into the Wells Fargo Center, we're going through the parking lot, and that was one of my concerns when, I knew I'd be going down, once Chris had asked me, would be, getting into the event and then leaving the event. And neither of it turned out to be any kind of issue. I have a genuine issue with any kind of parking lot because of, mirrors, the side mirrors of cars and trucks, especially because the trucks are higher up and, the truck mirrors hit you in the face. The car mirrors hit you in the ribs or in the abdomen, maybe the hips. But I had no trouble getting through, and Chris helped guide me through. I wasn't holding on to him or anything, but between my cane and Chris's direction, we got in without any issue. But I was excited to be there because I used to go to a lot of games. I had Flyer season tickets for about 10 years. And growing up as a kid, we had Philly season tickets. And I just loved going down. Even before I had Flyer season tickets on my own, my primary ophthalmologist, as I was growing up, was a family friend. And we would buy 10 games from him. And so I'd go down to the Flyers games, at least 10 times a year, sometimes a little more. If my dad got tickets through one of the vendors from his business. And I would go to the Sixers every so often and the Eagles every so often, but primarily Flyers and Phillies was where I went. Obviously, the Eagles, football, what is there, most 10 or 11 games a year at home. So the chances just aren't as great. And the Sixers, while I like any kind of sport, it's just something that I didn't go down too often. So when we walked into the Wells Fargo Center, a little bit different than it's been for me that I remember. Go through a magnetometer to check for guns and any other kind of weapons, I guess. And one thing that kind of makes me a little, I don't want to say paranoid, but one thing that concerns me going through those, it's not going through the actual device. It's when you take your stuff out of your pockets, your phone, your keys. I am, and I've been like this for my entire life. I am always weary of giving my keys to anyone because I want to know where they are. Usually they're in my pocket unless I'm home and in bed, and then they're in my pocket on my pants that are on the floor unless I've worn dress clothes. Then they're on my nightstand with all the other contents of my pockets. Because I one time lost my keys, and of course, because I can't see very well, and because I'm a man, I had trouble finding them. Neither we can do too much about, but I did find them, and I'm again just and that happened when I was I don't want to say I was a kid, but I would call that person a kid today because I was probably around 18 or 20 years old when that happened. So taking the stuff out of my pockets and putting it into a little bin that leaves my possession, and then walking through the magnetometer and then collecting my stuff on the other side, it just concerns me. What if I pick the wrong keys up? What if I pick the wrong phone up? Any of that. And of course, there was no issue. To make a long story short, we went through and got through no trouble. We then had to wait in the line to have our ticket scanned so we could walk in and go to our seats. And it's kind of funny. We were in section 109 at the Wells Fargo Center, I believe row 10, Chris said. My hockey tickets, my Flyer tickets, were in section 111, row 8. So roughly a section or so over, because we were right on the aisle with 110, and my hockey tickets in 111 were seats 3 and 4, so just a couple seats off of the aisle with 110. So, it was nice being down there. I noticed that the the scoreboard obviously had changed. And again, I can't tell you the last time I was inside the Wells Fargo Center. I last had Flyer season tickets in 2003. And I've been to 2 games since I had a trabeculectomy on February 5th, 2003. One was using my old seats, like I just mentioned, 111, row 8, seats 3 and 4. Liz and I went down. We stayed for one period and then left. And then I had gone down to a preseason game. My friend Alex had invited Jacob and I to go to a preseason game one year. I think it was the same year I went to the Phillies game with the Rockies, which was my first time at Citizens Bank Park. And that stadium had been years old before I'd even been in there. And as I'm mentioning that, I have never been inside the Link. And Lincoln Financial Field, I think, opened in 2003 for the 2003 Eagles season. So what's that, almost 17 years, 16 years and change for sure. But but I was wondering how things were going to go. And I didn't really look too much into what was available for me, if there were any kind of accessibility features that the Sixers may have. And I didn't think about that. And actually today, when I was thinking about this episode, I thought, let me reach out to the 76ers to see if they offer anything like that, whether it's some sort of audio. I know that I could listen to the game on the radio. The problem is when you listen on your phone, there's usually a delay. As I've mentioned before, my favorite radio station is Radio 104.5 here in Philadelphia. And they're an alternative station. And it's kind of funny because if I'm listening on my clock radio right next to my bed and I miss something, I then will ask Alexa to play that station so that I can, in about 2 minutes or 2.5 minutes time, I can then hear what I missed. Sometimes it's a keyword to enter so you can win something. Other times it might just be something, I want to know who did a certain song and, didn't sound hound it in time or whatever. So I knew that I couldn't listen on my phone, and I certainly wasn't going to look around because I know we don't have any kind of transistor radios laying around here. And so I wondered how was it going to be to sit in the stands and be at this game? And it's certainly something that I missed going down, and just the excitement of walking in and all the people there. And you can just, one thing that you don't get when you watch something on TV is the experience of the crowd noise and the excitement and the cheering. Yeah, you can hear it a little bit on the TV or the radio, but it's definitely different when you go down, and that is something that I definitely missed. And one thing that happened while I was there, and I quickly realized, when I used to go to Jane's softball games, when Liz and I would go to Jane's softball games, Liz and I would primarily stay together. Now that we didn't always stay together. Sometimes Liz would go off and talk to someone, or I would wander off to talk to someone, but mostly I would try and concentrate on the game. Now, the trouble is, we also like to socialize at the game. We became friendly with some of the other parents and we would talk to them. And, a lot of people like to try and multitask, and that's not something. I can't listen to both things. And I have to hear, if I hear a hit, I would then have to say to Liz, Liz, where's that at? And she would say grounder to short or fly ball to left. And growing up, Liz was not a sports type person. So she would say, oh, it's a hit to center field. Well, to me, a hit to center field means that runner is going to stay at first, is, going to be at least a single. She just meant the ball was hit to center field. It might have been a fly ball and it was an out. So, that took some practice coaching her to do that. But that was the issue that I quickly realized was going to be the thing at the Sixers game. I was either going to be able to socialize with my friend Chris or try and follow the game a little bit more than I actually did. And it was kind of a mix. And Chris knew that I had no idea. I had no idea what was going on because we were there early enough that, he asked me, what I could see. And then in this game, the Sixers wore home white jerseys and the Bulls wore a black jersey, and I think the numbers were red. I couldn't see the numbers, so I couldn't tell you, but I think the numbers were red, not 100% on that. But it was basically black against white, so that made it easy, I guess. But again, I couldn't really see, even out on the floor when there wasn't anybody in our way or anything like that. And the tickets were pretty good for that. So, there wasn't like there was a lot of traffic down the aisle. We were right on the aisle, so any kind of traffic went through pretty quickly. I could tell there was movement on the floor. I couldn't really see what was going on. What I did notice on occasion, and I'd only noticed it when the Sixers did this, I would see if somebody from the Sixers either, was jumping in the air because there was a high contrast. When the Sixer jumped in the air and was away from the brightness of the floor, which of course is a bright wood color, and the backdrop became the crowd behind him, which was darker because the lights were dim around over the crowd areas, and it was darker. So I could see if and again, I couldn't tell if it was a dunk, if it was a jump shot. Obviously, if it was a dunk, you kind of hear the the guy hitting the rim, or whatever. If it's a jump shot, you see a guy up in the air, and then a second or two later, you hear the ball hitting the rim or hitting the backboard, and either going in or not going in. And sometimes you could tell that it went in only because of the crowd noise, not necessarily because, you could hear something, you could hear the swish of the net or something like that. So that was pretty much the only thing that I could see on the floor. Again, I could tell that there was movement. I couldn't tell if it was down one end or the other, except for when, like I said, when the Sixers, were up in the air and the contrast. So what Chris would do, maybe something would happen and there would be a cheer. He would then interrupt what he was saying or interrupt me if I was talking and say, so-and-so just stole the ball or so-and-so just made a three or, and again, the crowd kind of lets you know if it's somebody stealing the ball, it's a clap and a yeah or something like that. If somebody hits a three, obviously a lot more exciting and people are cheering more. So you could kind of tell. Although I have to say, I know there was at one moment a guy for Chicago got blocked, and the crowd made a lot of noise for that. So so that one was a little bit tricky. Same thing goes with the scoreboard. I could see some movement up there. I could see the scoreboard was huge, and I was kind of disappointed that I couldn't see it because my memory of the scoreboard there was, a lot small. The video screen was a lot smaller. And now I guess the whole thing is a screen, as where before there was a screen above, some numbers that had, were basically the old time scoreboard that had lights in it. And, the clock was like that. I told you it's been a while since I've been down. So it's been, that's obviously changed. And I was surprised to see that the scoreboard, that the video display there was so huge, and as well as being disappointed that I really couldn't see it. So overall, I first of all, look, getting out and being able to sit there and talk to my friends and, go through stuff and talk about different things, that in itself is great. But going down to actually watch the game, I really couldn't tell what was going on other than what he was telling me and, just gauging from the crowd. Sixers ended up winning, which as I told him when he offered to, when he invited me down, I said, you're inviting me down, they're going to lose. He's like, nah, they're good at home this year. And I knew that they had only had 2 losses all year at home. And I know Chicago wasn't a great team this year, or isn't a great team this year. But usually when I go down, it's pretty likely that they're not going to win, unless they're a great team. And I guess the Sixers are pretty good. At least at home, they're definitely good. I think they're 20-2 at home this year at this stage, and I think they've had a game or two since I've been down. So. But it was definitely a lot of fun going down. And we got up at one point, we walked around and I was surprised at how much bigger the arena has gotten since we were down there with the Flyers tickets. They've added all sorts of little, almost like they've added another outside, expanded outwards to add more food areas and things like that. And I forgot to ask him, and I guess it's not really polite to ask him, but I kind of think he paid $24 for a bottle of water, which I had, a soda, which he had, and a large crab fries. If you're not familiar with the Philadelphia area, there's a place called Chicky and Pete's that they do these things called crab fries, and it's basically French fries with Old Bay seasoning. And of course, they are just outstanding. And you get a little cheese thing to dip this stuff into if you want. which is a whole other issue for me, and I'll talk about that in a second. But we walked around the arena, and he asked me if I wanted anything to eat, and I had eaten at home before we left, and so I wasn't super hungry, but I figured I'll get something while we're down here, and so we shared the crab fries, and we had our sodas and waters and whatnot. Eating for me, French fries are obviously an easy thing to eat. I stick my hand in the container, I pull a couple out and eat them. Dipping them into something, not as easy. Now the cheese container, the cheese sauce container was one of those plastic containers that you get a dipping sauce in at a restaurant. I guess maybe even a fast food restaurant. Sometimes you could get it in something like that. It has a plastic lid on it, and I'm talking about it now because for lunch today I had a salad that had corn salsa from Chipotle, which I loved. Jacob got a burrito last night, and whenever we go to get a burrito there, I always get a corn salsa on the side for me to throw on my salad, which I just love the corn salsa from there. So just in case you were wondering. But the container that the corn salsa came in today seems similar to the one that the cheese came in the other night at the game. And so dipping into that wasn't too difficult because the table that we were standing at was a darker table. So again, high contrast. The cheese is very light. Table was dark, somewhat easy to see. Again, it's hard for me to judge distance and all that stuff, but I dipped some into the cheese sauce. Now, Chris had also went and got a couple of smaller containers, like the paper containers of ketchup, and that was more difficult because I couldn't see the end of the fry. Trying to get it into the ketchup container, that was a little more tricky. So I didn't do that as often. But it was nice to grab something to eat. And as we were standing there eating, it became halftime because we had gotten up just before the half, and had gone to the bathroom and then walked around. So we stayed there for a little bit, and it got really noisy between the crowd coming out from the seating area to they cranked up the volume on some of the video screens that are in that were in this one area that we were having the French fries at, and so we walked around a little more, and then went back and sat down for the beginning of the third, and that was the exciting point of the game because the Sixers were down by 1 at halftime and just took control of the game in the third. I think it was a 12-point swing or an 11-point swing from the halftime to the end of the third. They were down by 1, and by the end of the third, they were up by 10. So I guess an 11-point swing. They ended up winning the game by 11, 100-89. But one guy, and I don't remember, there were a couple of guys that were just nailing just about everything. I believe Al Horford, in the span of about a minute and a half, had at least 3 buckets, maybe 4. There was another guy that kept shooting 3-pointers that was just nailing those. So like I said, it was very exciting. The Bulls got a little cool, I guess, and the Sixers were just scorching them with that. And so it was very exciting, but because of that, it was much louder in the arena. So it was obviously a lot harder to talk, and socialize. So at some instances, my friend would just say, so-and-so hit a 3, or, Ben Simmons, dunked it or jammed it or whatever. And, and that part, especially when it was exciting and loud, and, that part was great. But the next day, after I thought about it, and how many different events I used to go to, how many different sporting events, and again, thinking back to when I was a kid, or even when I had the Flyers season tickets, when I could see a little bit better than I do now, where I didn't walk with the white cane, and I still couldn't follow the action as well as I certainly couldn't do play-by-play, but hockey is a fast-moving sport, for example, so to follow the action, it wasn't easy. I couldn't follow the puck because I could never see the puck. And at the game the other night, I couldn't see, obviously, like I said, I couldn't really see much of anything. So I realized when we were driving in the car, when Liz and I were driving in the car the next day, and I don't remember what we had on the radio. It was some sort of alternative song because that's what we listened to, but it was live, and I thought, this is why I enjoy going to concerts so much more than going to sporting events, because I don't have to see. It doesn't matter if they do something crazy on stage. Yeah, okay, I'm going to miss it, but the music is still going to be there, and so that's the big difference with today and enjoying the music, going to a concert more than going to a sporting event, because it's just it's just it's something that I know what's happening. I can sing along. I mean, you don't want me to sing along, but I can if I want to at a concert. At a Sixers game, I can't. Sometimes there may be music in between plays or in between action, and I guess even sometimes during play they had music on. I don't remember words being. I just remember it being like a very upbeat type of music. So it's so it's so different, and it's and I realize that's why going back around 10 years ago, why we started going to concerts more and sporting events less. Look, I don't know what those seats cost in the lower bowl of the Wells Fargo Center for the Sixers, but I'm sure they weren't cheap. I know they weren't. They weren't the price of my Flyers tickets back when I first started getting them in the early 90s. I think when I got rid of my Flyers tickets, I think the regular season games, I think that the face value of the tickets was like $90 a ticket. And obviously as a season ticket holder, you get a discount, but again, still a pretty big chunk of change. Parking being like $30 more, and it's expensive to go down. And if you can't see it, it's not really a good expense. Again, it's good if you're going down with a friend, especially one like Chris and I. We hadn't done anything in a long time, and so that part was great. And it was nice, catching up with him, and we talked a little business. We talked about this podcast because he likes to listen, and that part is great. But to say, that I got my money's worth out of that ticket, I probably didn't. And that's the sad part to me, and like I said, I reached out to the Sixers to see if they offer anything, and I'll report back once I get a response from them, if I get a response from them, because I'm not sure I mentioned it in previous podcasts. I had reached out to the Philadelphia sports teams to get donations for the National Federation of the Blind of Pennsylvania State Convention, where we do this auction. And I'd reached out to all the teams as well as Penn State University to get items to auction off. And Flyers said that I was approved and they were going to send me an autographed puck. I never got it. Sixers, it says pending to this day. Eagles, no response whatsoever. And the Phillies, I had to mail something in, so there wasn't anything that I could check to see. So, it's something that, I'll continue to watch stuff on TV. And as I told Chris, I don't really watch hockey anymore at all, because the little vision that I do have, the best thing I see is glare. And when I watch hockey, that's pretty much all I see. The ice is so bright that I just can't. I just can't watch it. It's just it just kind of, gives me a headache after a little bit. But again, it was fun getting out with my friend and going down there and feeling the excitement in the arena and how loud it was, and that part was very cool. And and I do miss that. But it's just different now. It's just not being able to follow the action without somebody constantly telling you what's going on, makes it tough, to really to follow the game and have a conversation with somebody. Of course, that's really out of the question at this point. I got to do one or the other. And part of it may be, my age where, I can't multitask while listening to two different things. I used to be able to listen to two different things and handle it, but now I got to concentrate on one or the other. I can't do the whole thing. So, but I do appreciate Chris for taking me down. I mean, like I said, it was a lot of fun. We got to catch up and talk about a whole bunch of things. And if you're in Pennsylvania, and I think I did mention his company is called Dougherty and Company Insurance Services, and you could reach out to him if you need home or auto or motorcycle or boat, any kind of insurance, life insurance. He's our agent, and now I've known him longer than he's been in insurance, but he does all our insurance now, and he's great at doing that as well. So reach out to him he's in media, 610-566-8710, 610-566-8710 for Dougherty and Company Insurance, and they'll be able to help you out if you're in Pennsylvania. But I do appreciate you listening to episode 58 of the I Can't See You podcast. If you would, I'd really appreciate it if you rated and reviewed over on Apple Podcast. It helps us grow. Again, any links on the site to Amazon or affiliate links, and if you have to buy something from Amazon, I'd appreciate it if you went through one of my links. That would be awesome. And again, if you haven't already subscribed, please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss another action-packed episode of the I Can't See You podcast. But I do appreciate you listening today and every time you listen. And thanks for checking us out. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day. Talk to you again next week.
Thank you for listening to the I Can't See You podcast. Follow David on Twitter. He is at David Bench.